New this morning, just 2 days before the Democratic primary in New York, Bernie Sanders is not in the state campaigning. In fact, I think it's 3 days. He's not in the U.S. at all. Sanders has been in Vatican City attending a conference on social and economic justice. And we learned this morning that he met with the Pope. They talked climate change, the economy. Listen to what he told CNN international correspondent Ben Wiedemann.
I just wanted to let him know how appreciative I was of the extraordinary role that he is playing throughout the world in raising consciousness about massive levels of income and wealth inequality, about the greed that is so pervasive in the world's economy today, such that the top 1% now owns more wealth globally than the bottom 99%.
All right, so neither Democratic candidate is in New York. You see that Sanders is at Vatican City. Clinton is in California, several fundraisers this weekend. Let's bring in CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona, who is a Hillary Clinton supporter, and Democratic strategist and Bernie Sanders supporter, Nomiki Konst. Ladies, good to have both of you back.
Good morning, Victor.
Nomiki, I want to start with you. Sanders has now released his tax returns after months and months of calls for him to do so. I think we have the numbers we can put up on the screen. $205,617 unadjusted income for 2014. Why did it take so long if this is generally kind of a no bold headline return?
Well, what we're seeing is that Bernie Sanders is very much like the average person. When they're busy, they prepare taxes on their own, and he released them during the tax season. And what better way to call attention to the fact that Hillary was hosting a $253,000 a plate dinner last night for the DNC, which is giving money to the campaign in very curious ways. What better way to show that, you know, what Bernie Sanders makes in a year is less than what Hillary Clinton makes in an hour giving a speech. So, you know, this is a tale of two campaigns here. You have Bernie Sanders, who is really a man of the people. His campaign is funded by the people. And you have Hillary Clinton, who we now learn has made $11 million in 2014 alone from giving Wall Street speeches. And now we also learn that she is personally given $570,000 to her campaign. My question is, in what ways is she circumnavigating campaign finance laws? You know, there are campaign finance limits for Wall Street. So, you know, are giving these speeches, the $150 million the Clintons have made since 2000 alone off of Wall Street speeches, is this a really creative way of selling the Lincoln bedroom so that they can fund their White House
There are
bid?
a lot of accusations there. And let me jump in here, Maria, come to you. I want to look at numbers.
Well, it was reported,
because...
by the way. Let me make it clear real quick.
Okay.
Michael Isikoff did an investigative report on this in Yahoo News.
But there were many accusations. That may have been one of them that you supported from that Yahoo News report. But let me go to the numbers because those numbers are facts. $205,617 made in 2014 by the Sanders. Let's put the numbers back up, guys. Compared to the $28,336,212 $212 for the Clintons in that year. Maria, let me come to you. This disparity, does this jeopardize her fighting for you campaign theme? I mean, he makes, the two of them, the Sanders couple made less than 1% of what the Clintons made in 2014.
No, not at all, because right now what we're seeing is that the majority of voters are judging her on her record, on her accomplishments, on her proposals, on what she has focused on in terms of moving forward and breaking down economic barriers for everybody who wants to have the chance to meet the American dream. And frankly, what she talks about is that she has been blessed and how she has had all of these opportunities. She has fought for those opportunities for others. And that those are the messages that are resonating. And clearly, they are resonating more than what Bernie Sanders' messages are resonating. In fact, we see it in the numbers. She's 2.4 million votes ahead of Bernie Sanders. She's 220 pledged delegates ahead of Bernie Sanders. And all of these accusations that are coming from Bernie Sanders' campaign are just laughable. And I think they underscore the fact that he is losing, and it's kind of desperation times for them, focusing on these distractions as opposed to the messages that voters are responding to that are coming from Hillary Clinton.
Maria, let me ask you this. There now will be, of course, the shift to asking, will Hillary Clinton release the transcripts of the speeches she delivered to Goldman Sachs and others? Will she?
Well, why don't we wait until Bernie Sanders releases multiple years, in fact, 15, 20 years of taxes, which is exactly what...
Hold on, Nikki, let her finish,
Thank
and then I'll bring that to you.
Which is exactly what Hillary Clinton has released. But again, all of that is a distraction, which underscores the fact that Bernie Sanders' implicit accusation here, which is that she is bought and paid for by Wall Street, is also laughable, because as we saw in the debate, where Dana Bash did a great job in asking very pointedly the question to Bernie Sanders, can he point to any proof whatsoever that she has done anything to favor Wall Street, and he was not able to come up with one example.
Namiki, let me come to you. Many candidates, not all, because we're still waiting for Donald Trump's tax returns, but many candidates in this cycle and others have released more than a single year's returns. Is 1 year transparency?
He's going to release more on Monday. Simple as that. But regardless of that, you know, this is not an equal. This is a false equivalent. Taking money from Wall Street, multiple millions, hundreds of millions of dollars by giving speeches to Wall Street, is not what democratic values are about. This is about judgment, this is about character, this is about principle, and if you're going to go out there and fight against Wall Street while you're taking hundreds of millions of dollars, that's just dishonest, flat out. So to say that his claims are dishonest when they've been they're investigative reporters, some of the most renowned investigative reporters, pulling these numbers up from FEC filings that are just facts, well, that's the proof. And furthermore, to go back to that point, you know, Hillary Clinton
the proof
is
that
not
what?
going...
The proof that what, though?
The proof that
I need the end of that sentence.
The FEC reports show the numbers. There are no lies here.
But the proof that it compromised her views, it compromised her voting while she was a senator, it'll compromise her as president.
Not just her record, but it's not just her record, it's her rhetoric. I mean, last night she had a fundraiser, $353,000 plate fundraiser. You know, when you're saying that you're going to take on... Listen, when you say that doesn't mean anything. When you say you're going to take on income inequality, Maria, you're a super delegate. You know very well how the DNC is run.
We've got,
we've got to wrap this up. The DNC raises money for a lot of candidates, and frankly, Bernie Sanders has not been able to do this.
That's not true. That is not true, and that's fact checked. He raised money with
We've got to wrap this up. Namiki, I'm going to give you the last 10 seconds here to finish your point, and then we got to wrap it there.
The last 10 seconds, Maria says that Hillary is doing so well. Why was it that Democrats approved of her by 64% and now 34% just 6 months later find her trustworthy? That's Democrats.
Why? Right,
She's winning.
We'll finish it there. Maria Cardona, Namiki Khan.
Those are the
she hasn't gone over 200 pledged delegates.
Those are the facts.
6 weeks. 200 pledged delegates in 6 weeks. She hasn't gone over.
Programming note, ladies. Bernie Sanders is on State of the Union. He'll answer more of these questions himself tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. I love having these conversations. We never have enough time for them, but Namiki and Maria, thanks. We'll have you later throughout the show.
All right, well, Donald Trump is launching fresh attacks against the Republican Party establishment. What he's saying now about the GOP and Bernie Sanders that's making headlines.
Plus, a second deadly earthquake rocks Japan, killing nearly 24 now. We've got a live report on the destruction. That's coming up.
And later they heard this. Remember that paper from a few memorable Trump covers? We have them here for you. First of all, Crucified, Don Voyage, or even taking it a little bit further, Size Matters. This wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement. A lot of folks noticed as well. It almost had some conditions attached to it. Here to talk about it, CNN political commentator and Ted Cruz supporter Ben Ferguson, and Errol Lewis, CNN political commentator and political anchor at Time Warner Cable News. Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. All righty. So with the endorsement, the Post says they are expecting a pivot. And I want to read part of this to you. Should he win the nomination, we expect Trump to pivot, not just on the issues, but in his manner. The Post pivot. Trump needs to be more presidential, better informed on policy, more self-disciplined, and less thin-skinned. So let me ask you, Errol, when you read that, I'm looking at thinking, what is the likelihood that Donald Trump suddenly is going to transform himself if his address changes from New York City to Pennsylvania Avenue?
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that the New York Post editorial board is serious about this. I mean, Donald Trump is going to turn 70 years old in June of this year. This is somebody who's had great success, not just in the business world, but politically, acting the way that he acts. And there's not a whole lot of self-discipline, and there's not a whole lot of presidential behavior, and there's not a whole lot of being well-informed compared with, say, just acting on your gut. So I'm not sure why he's supposed to now turn and walk away from all of the things that have brought him a great deal of success. I think the more interesting question is how can you go this far with these qualities and these traits that the New York Post says they're a little bit worried about?
But isn't that what everybody's been asking, is how is Trump able to say what he says, Ben Ferguson, without seeming to lose the support, particularly of these loyal fans and voters?
Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump has the best supporters that you can get. There's nothing that he can say or do that turn them away from him. I mean, they're literally, when he said he could walk out in the street and shoot a man in New York and none of his supporters would leave him, he was probably telling the truth. It may be the most truthful statement of the entire campaign cycle. But this idea that Donald Trump is going to start acting presidential, we know how this story ends. He said in Miami, and his campaign said in Miami, when we were having that CNN debate in Miami, that he was going to be more presidential starting at that point. It lasted about 35 minutes, and then he went back to being the normal Donald Trump that he is. He insults, he antagonizes, he puts people down, and he's a bully. And I don't see him pivoting from this. He's been doing this for as long as I've known Donald Trump has existed. For this idea that he somehow is going to flip a switch on and become presidential,
be somebody different than he is,
naive.
Than we know him to be.
This is who he is, and he's going to stay this way. And it'll probably get worse as president because he'll be the president, and you can get away with whatever you want to.
Well,
when you're the president, you're
that's
the biggest.
Debatable.
Not really though. But if you look at Donald Trump, my point is this: if he's the president of the United States of America, no one can interrupt you at that point. No one can really trash talk back at you at that point, at least in this country. He will do this on a bigger stage with a bigger microphone, and he'll do it to other world leaders, and that's why there's a lot of people concerned about it.
If he makes it there, and that's part of the conversation as well, as he's continuing to lash out specifically at the GOP establishment here. Yeah. He says, this surprised a lot of people, he says he feels sorry for Bernie Sanders. Let's listen here together.
He wins, he wins, he wins. He keeps winning. He keeps winning week after week. Bernie is winning. And then I listened to the pundits. And tonight, Bernie Sanders won again for the 7th or 8th or 9th time in a row. But he's got okay. And you know what? That's okay. Because I feel sorry for him in a way. He wins. And then you listen to the pundits. But he can't win. You know why? Because it's a rigged system, folks.
So, Errol, what do you make of him using Bernie Sanders to make his point about what he calls a rigged system?
Well,
referring to delegates, of course.
The word rigged is the real problem there, because it's not rigged. I mean, the rules are the rules, and Bernie Sanders, in some ways, is in a parallel situation in the sense that the need to get a majority of delegates appears to be out of reach, or there are scenarios in which it will clearly be out of reach, no matter how many states you win. So. Just as Donald Trump has won lots and lots of states and a fair amount of delegates, but that final prize may be out of his reach as well. I mean, I think it's really terribly misleading, though, and quite irresponsible, going back to your earlier point, to sort of look at the rules as they have existed for decades, to look at the rules that he knew going into this contest, and then say it's rigged, and to use his platform and tell millions of people that something untoward or possibly illegal is going on, when nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, if he doesn't have enough delegates, he doesn't become the nominee. It's that simple.
Ben, do you agree with that? Because there are a lot of people who are watching this, and they're looking at the numbers, and they're listening to him, and they're wondering, is this an archaic system, and does my vote matter? If I go to the polls, what does it matter if the delegates are coming in and do what they want to do?
Look, what this shows is that Donald Trump is a weak candidate, and I'll use his own logic. He said that Mitt Romney was a loser. He said that John McCain was a loser. Both of those losers, to use Donald Trump's words, were able to wrap up the nomination long before this date that we're on today on the calendar. If they're losers and they were able to secure a nomination with the same exact rules that Donald Trump is having to deal with, what does that say about Donald Trump? His problem is he's afraid people are going to call him a loser. He's afraid that he's not going to win the nomination. So instead of dealing with the reality that his campaign on the ground has been very disorganized, almost non-existent in some states, instead of taking accountability for that, He says the system's rigged, and he's going to keep saying it as long as people are willing to listen to it.
Well,
but Donald Trump has got a problem. He has a problem on the ground game. Let's also look at one last thing. He sent out, his campaign was working on delegates. Instead of them going to Washington State, they were going to Washington, D.C. and vice versa. Is that a rigged system? No, that means you have an incompetent campaign that has no idea how to run a state-by-state campaign. It's really sad that he says it's rigged.
All righty. Ben Ferguson and Errol Lewis, always appreciate your insight, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are just coming into new day. The death toll has risen after that devastating earthquake in Japan. We're going to take you live to Tokyo with more of these really heartbreaking images. Also, a monster tornado touches down in Oklahoma. We have the video from the storm chasers, and we'll have it for you in a moment. Now, we've learned has died as a result of this earthquake. This comes on the heels of Thursday's 6.2 quake. 9 people were killed in that one.
And hundreds of people have been evacuated, we know. We're learning, though, the biggest concern right now, the scores of people feared trapped beneath collapsed buildings and piles of debris. South Korea and Britain have pledged their support to help with relief efforts. CNN's Andrew Stevens is in Tokyo with the very latest, where I understand they actually felt it in Tokyo there. Andrew, but what is their most urgent need? Do they feel they have the resources to get to those people they fear to be trapped right now?
Yeah, we must remember that this is not an uncommon thing in Japan. This is an earthquake-prone area, Christy, and the Japanese authorities are throwing a lot of people at the rescue attempts. They've increased the number of the self-defense force personnel, that's effectively the Japanese military, to 25,000 people. 15,000 people already on the site around Kumamoto, another 10,000 on their way by tomorrow, to give you an idea of just what they're doing. Now, at the moment, the death toll is at 23. As you say, that does not sound particularly high given the force of this earthquake, but the toll may well rise. Local media reporting that dozens still may be trapped under the rubble there, so that's what we know at the moment. But certainly there is a lot of effort going into the search and rescue at this stage. It's very much a search and rescue mission. Should point out, though, that the conditions are deteriorating rapidly down there, guys. We're talking about heavy rain sweeping in. Also, of course, in any big earthquake event, there are aftershocks, and these are big aftershocks. We're talking magnitude 4, magnitude 5 on a city that's already weakened by not one but 2 earthquakes. If you go back to Thursday, that was a 6 magnitude earthquake which weakened a lot of buildings and flattened many more. On top of that, 2 days later, you get a tremor which is 15 times more powerful. So buildings that were already structurally weakened have collapsed, and we're getting these aftershocks coming through. So at the moment, it's very much search and rescue, as I say, 23 dead, dozens more expected to be in the rubble, and the weather is deteriorating. As the Japanese Prime Minister says, this is a race against time. Like any earthquake, in these hours, it is a race against time to get to those survivors while they're still alive.
And we can see that in some of the pictures that are coming in here, for instance, of this bridge that is washed out. You wonder how those resources can get to those people and get those people then to safety. Andrew Stevens, thank you so much.